Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you're stepping into the academic or professional world for the very first time, you probably already know that the rules of communication can feel, well, incredibly intimidating. Honestly, it's kind of like a secret club with its own complex, unwritten handbook. But mastering these rules is quite literally the difference between your ideas being completely ignored and your work actually being taken seriously by the people who matter. But don't worry, consider me your guide. Today, we're going to demystify these rules together and transform you into a confident, highly intentional communicator who commands respect in any room.
Have you ever just stared at a blank page, paralyzed by formatting rules? Or maybe you felt like your final undergraduate thesis, the dreaded TCC, or even a high-stakes professional email required you to speak a totally different language? Look, you are definitely not alone. That anxiety around thick academic jargon, incredibly tight deadlines, and the sheer terror of standing in front of a judging panel, that is a universal experience. It feels like this giant academic gatekeeping system designed to keep you out. But it absolutely doesn't have to be this way, and we're going to break it all down so you can finally feel in control.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The power of communication. 2. The art of writing well. 3. From resumes to articles. 4. ABNT Survival Guide. And finally 5. Conquering the TCC.
Section 1. The power of communication. Nonviolent communication.
Okay, let's dive right in. Before we write a single word of a thesis or an email, we have to look at the most foundational unit of communication, how we interact with ourselves and our peers. Consider this four-step framework. It's called nonviolent communication, or NVC, developed by psychologist Marshall Rosenberg. When we're stressed out, like during those deep late-night group projects, our default biological setting is to react defensively. We attack the person rather than the problem. NVC is basically a practical cheat code to bypass all that drama. Instead of reacting, you simply state a pure observation of the facts, identify your true internal feeling, recognize your underlying universal need, and then make a clear, actionable request.
Let's look at a real-world application of this. Picture this. The deadline is tomorrow, and your partner hasn't sent their part. The instinct is to shout, "You're ruining the project and you never do your work," right? But that just makes them defensive. Instead, using NVC, you'd say, "When I see our deadline approaching, I feel anxious because I need clarity. Would you be willing to prioritize this task?" See what happened there? You frame it around your needs and make a polite, actionable request. It instantly diffuses the tension. It de-escalates the situation and creates a collaborative environment rather than a hostile one. Truly a game changer for project management.
Section 2. The art of writing well, turning ideas into expression. Let's level up from spoken words to the written page. Take a deep breath and consider this quote by philosopher Martin Heidegger. Language is the house of being. I really want to pause here because it reminds us that mastering language isn't just about memorizing pedantic, boring grammar rules. It's actually about structuring your very existence and your thoughts. When you use poor grammar or chaotic structure, people unconsciously doubt your competence. The way you wield language dictates exactly how the world perceives you and the boundaries of what you can achieve. So to build that house properly, you need to know exactly what kind of structure you're dealing with. Let's clear up a massive struggle for students: the difference between a summary and a review. A summary, or resumo, must be completely neutral and factual. It is a mirror reflecting the original work. Absolutely no opinions allowed. A review, or reseña, is where you get to step in. It requires your critical analysis and a justified personal evaluation. Mixing these two up is a classic rookie mistake. Seriously, students lose massive points by injecting their personal opinions into a summary where the professor specifically asked for just the facts.
Once you know what you're writing, you need the right glue to hold it all together. And that glue is textual cohesion. Referential cohesion uses pronouns and synonyms so you aren't awkwardly repeating the exact same noun in every single sentence. Sequential cohesion uses connectives, like however, therefore, or because, to link your logic. Think about poor cohesion. The project is late, the client is mad, we need a meeting. It sounds robotic, right? Now add good cohesion. The project is late, and consequently the client is mad, therefore we need a meeting. So much better. Without these tools, your writing just reads like a chaotic grocery list of random thoughts.
Section 3. From resumes to articles, mastering technical genres. Let's see how this builds into the real world. For your resume, structure is absolutely everything. This document is a precise synthesis of your capabilities, and if it's a mess, it goes straight into the trash. You need a clear professional objective. Your experiences must always be listed in reverse chronological order, meaning the most recent first, because, let's be honest, employers only really care about what you've been doing lately. And above all, You've got to adapt this document for every single job you apply for, keeping it brutally objective, highly concise, and flawlessly formatted.
Now, there is a stark contrast between everyday workplace documents and academic ones. Technical text, like business reports and commercial letters, are denotative and brief. In business, time is money, so you get straight to the point without any fluff. Scientific text, on the other hand, entirely different beast. You can't just state a fact, you have to prove your work. They require rigorous methodology, deeply cited research, logical argumentation, and strict adherence to peer-reviewed formatting rules.
Section 4. ABNT Survival Guide, Demystifying the Rules.
All right, we're entering the territory that strikes fear into the hearts of students everywhere, the strict national formatting standards known as the ABNT. Take a breath. It's truly just a set of instructions. If you look at a massive 100-page thesis, it seems totally impossible to manage, but we can break these overwhelming requirements into 3 highly manageable buckets. Pretextual is simply the packaging, your title page, your abstract, your table of contents. Textual is the core story of your actual research, and posttextual is your proof, the dense references and any annexes or raw data. See, chunk it down into packaging, story, and proof, and it's really not nearly as scary.
Now, what about the academic jargon? Let's translate some of that intimidating Latin. Apud simply means cited by. Imagine you find a perfect quote, but it's inside a newer book referencing an older author you can't actually find. You use apud to say, hey, I read author A who is quoting author B. It's a simple, elegant tool for giving proper credit. And most importantly, it helps you avoid the dreaded accusation of academic plagiarism, which can literally derail your entire degree.
Here's another incredibly common one. Et al. This literally just means and others. If a scientific paper has 6 or 7 authors, which, trust me, happens all the time, you do not want to write out all their names every single time you reference them. You double your word count just in names alone. These Latin terms aren't meant to confuse you. They're actually brilliant little shortcuts designed to make reading and writing so much smoother.
Okay, do me a huge favor. Take a quick screenshot of this slide right now. This is your definitive, foolproof checklist for core formatting. You need A4 paper. Top and left margins at 3 centimeters, bottom and right at 2 centimeters, Times or Arial font at 12 points, and remember that 1.5 line spacing? Yeah, that's specifically so your professor actually has room to write notes and corrections in red ink. Follow this exact formula and your document is instantly professional, fully compliant, and ready to be taken seriously.
Section 5. Conquering the TCC, Writing and Defending Your Thesis.
We have arrived at the climax of our hero's journey. This is where all your previously learned skills combine. The textual core of your thesis is not just a random collection of data dumped onto a page. It's a logical narrative sequence. You introduce the context and the problem. Then, if your methodology is the hunt, explaining exactly the tools and paths you took, your results are the raw treasure you dug up. In the discussion, you interpret what that treasure actually means to the world, and you conclude by finally answering your original problem. Your thesis is simply a highly structured story of discovery.
As you write this story, you'll naturally need to include the voices of other experts. You've got to integrate these skillfully. Use direct discourse, exact quotes, inside quotation marks when you want to provide absolute authenticity and highlight a particularly powerful or controversial statement. But use indirect discourse, paraphrasing their ideas in your own words, when you just need to keep your own narrative flowing smoothly without constant visual and grammatical interruptions.
Once the writing is fully done, you have to present it to a panel. And if there's one absolute, unbreakable rule for your presentation slides, it's this number right here, 24-point font. That is the absolute minimum font size you should ever use. Anything smaller and your audience is just squinting at the screen instead of listening to you. Do not overwhelm the judging panel with massive walls of tiny text. Remember, your slides are a visual aid, not a teleprompter for you to read from.
Here are your rapid-fire oral defense strategies to make sure you nail the presentation. Keep your slide design incredibly simple and uncluttered. Stand with a professional posture, shoulders back, and make sweeping eye contact with the entire panel. Manage your time strictly. Practice at home with a stopwatch so you don't get cut off. Manage your nerves with deep breathing right before you start. And most importantly, anticipate the panel's questions ahead of time. You spent months on this. You are the expert on your research, so own the room.
Which brings us to our final thought for the day. We've covered a massive amount of ground, from the deep empathy required in nonviolent communication all the way down to the incredibly rigid margins of national formatting rules. But always remember, these aren't just arbitrary academic hurdles meant to torture you. They are the foundational tools of your long-term professional success. Now that you truly know how to structure your thoughts, avoid the pitfalls, and master the rules of the game, the real question is, how will you use your voice to shape your future? Think deeply about that as you outline your next big project. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.